Howdy Year 10 historians, it's time to talk about land rights and protests as part of our unit on Indigenous rights and freedoms. This is all from chapter 4.10 in your textbook. The learning goals for today. 1. You're going to know why Indigenous people walked off the Wave Hill station in 1966. And 2. You're going to be able to understand the perspectives of people from the past. We're going to do a little activity on that topic, on that skill. Okay. This event was known as the Gurindji Strike, or the Wave Hill Walk-Off. Yeah, the Gurindji was the name of the station and was in Wave Hill. So in 1966, Indigenous workers walked off Wave Hill cattle station because they were fed up with bad treatment. Yep, something that's probably quite common all over Australia at the time. This group of Indigenous people walked off. They struck. They had a strike. And it ended up being the first successful land rights campaign in Australia. But where is it, I hear you ask? Yep, there's Wave Hill right there. It's in far northwest Northern Territory. And here is a plaque out the front of the cattle station from back in the day. That's a primary source photo right there. Right, let's look at the background. Going to go back a little bit here. So, the Vestey family, Lord Vestey family, owned the farm since 1914. However, it did cover the traditional lands of the Gurindji people, which is why it's known as the Gurindji Strike. Okay, and this kind of thing would be very common. Yeah, farmlands that are also part of traditional lands of certain Indigenous groups. The working conditions on that cattle station were very hard. It got low pay. The Indigenous workers received disrespectful treatment by white workers. Racism was much more prevalent then than it is now, and really poor living conditions for the workers who were also living there. Yeah, there were already 3 strikes at that same place in 1949, 1952, and 1955. This one was much more successful though. So, our activity today, we're going to be looking at, just like we did last time, we're going to be looking at perspectives. I want you to view this scene through the lens of these different perspectives. Yeah, so you got the strike happening. I want you to view it from the perspective of Lord Vestey. How might he feel about it? I want you to view it from the point of view of the Indigenous workers. How did they feel out about it? What about the Australian government? What do you reckon their view might have been? And an average Australian person at the time, an average white Australian, what do you think their perspective might have been? Just write a couple of sentences under the headings of each of those 4 different dot points. Okay, our video for today is the 50th anniversary video called Wave Hill Walk-Off. Take it away.
For this anniversary, as an Aboriginal unionist, it's both humbling and also quite empowering to know that, you know, I can sit here on Gurindji country because of Vincent Lingiari and the Gurindji workers. You know, the original strike, well, the trigger for that strike was wages and conditions, but it was so much more than that. It was about land rights, but it was also about, you know, standing in the face of racism, systemic racism and oppression. And the dispute really shifted the trade union movement in a lot of ways, almost opening the door for Aboriginal activists like me to be proud Aboriginal unionists.
Pilot Watrill, 1942. I've been walking down Wave Hill. Every morning, we've been always get up early and calling manager for work every morning, you know, let him know. You work there, you work there. What we've been woke up now? We've been woke up from station, coming this way. pants all the way. Up in Quebec, Langa Camp, Kita Swag, and children. Up in Oak, what is the river there? Down here. Wait for that union map to bring him food. Sugar, milk, everything, you know, with pig for them children.
I worked on the waterfront for 27 years. In 1966, I was working on the Melbourne waterfront when the Union people brought Vincent down to the Melbourne, to the Victoria dock there, Captain Major, and told us about how they just walked off Wave Hill Station. Waterside Workers' principle was to support other workers who were on strike, and the Gurindji stockmen were no different.
As far as the MUA goes, there's a real that's real special for us to celebrate that history. To be here with the Gurindji though on the 50th anniversary is just amazing. You know, the feeling that we all had when we started the march yesterday. You know, we were asked to lead the rally, so to speak, and you know, it was really special.
It was, wasn't it?
The history of this struggle is fantastic, and I think a lot of us can learn a lot from I mean, they took on the biggest in the country at that time, 200 brave men and women, and they won the first round, and it's still going.
One of the most important events in Australian history, in our view. It's started the land rights movement, and it started as an industrial dispute, so it's something that's near and dear to our heart as trade unionists.
Pretty hard to describe, like to take this back to the people, especially even my own family, and explain it to them. It's going to be obviously emotional and yeah, just put shivers, like I'm shivering now just talking about it. Yeah, it puts goosebumps on me back everywhere. That they were hard-working people, and that vesties come over here and just totally exploited them, but they continue to work on and keep going. And some of them were shot for speaking out. You know, that's a big call in itself, just to say, oh, we've had enough. And for the men to lead the charge and take their people with them, yeah, that's the biggest part of it, yeah.
It's a historic thing that's happened here 50 years ago, but there's unfinished business. It's an ongoing struggle. Aboriginal culture and union culture is one thing. We work together as mates, as a collective, and it's a natural fit, the unions and the Indigenous community in the Northern Territory.
I was in Birmingham in 1976, and I went to a pub. There was no dogs, no blacks and no Irish written on the pub door. I thought that was racism, but this here's an absolute disgrace the way these people are treated.
Something that started off as an industrial dispute where Aboriginal people weren't getting treated the same way as the white people. It started with wages and conditions and ended up over the 9 years getting their land rights back. I think that's important for everyone, and it should be educated through the schools.
Where the Gurindji start the fence and Frank Hardy was there. Or Frank Hardy or...
No, I came down with Jeff Swain from the Seamen's Union to organise the fencing. And they showed us that they'd already done about 50 metres.
Yeah. From the pantry fence, this is the BRD and this is the bestie.
Well, righto.
And from the pantry fence, they start the fencing coming up to the river.
This is the place where it all started, down the bottom of the river. The truck actually did come to here and it went down to the bottom. That's why when we were coming in, I said to John Christopherson, there's no way in the world I'm going down there, we won't get back up. When him and I went down there at the 40th, I think it was, we struggled to drive the truck back up the hill. I remember sitting on a tree down in the river. There's a classic photograph of Brian, of all the young men, the old men, the whole lot, all sitting there. They were having an actual meeting to decide whether they were going back and what they wanted. And that was at that time. You know, I think we left Darwin 2 weeks after they'd walked off. I think 2 or 3 weeks. And they made the decision then and there. They were not going back, and they knew what they wanted. They wanted their land.
It's time for a pop quiz. Just 5 questions today. Here we go. Question 1. When was the Wave Hill walk-off? What year? Question 2. Where is the Tent Embassy? Question 3. What was the Yirrkala Bark Petition all about? Why did they sign it? Why did they send it into the Federal Parliament? Question 4. When was the Yirrkala petition written? And question 5. Who said land rights would threaten the tenure of every Australian? Pause the video here if you need a bit more time to write down all those 5 answers. Okay. Answers time. When was the Wave Hill walk-off? Was in 1966. Where is the Tent Embassy? It's in Canberra, out the front of the Federal Parliament building. What was the Yirrkala petition about? It was about mining. The government wanted to mine on Yirrkala land and they were not happy about it. When was it signed? In 1963, 3 years before the Wave Hill walk-off. So you can see there's quite a lot of stuff going on in the 60s in terms of land rights for Indigenous people. A real big awakening there. And question 5. Who said land rights would threaten the tenure of every Australian? That was Prime Minister William McMahon. How did you go? Did you get 5 out of 5? Good. I'm only saying good assuming you said 5. Okay. Your homework for today. I want you to answer this question in your exercise book. It's got to be a minimum of 100 words, which is about 5 or 6 sentences. Why did the Gurindji people walk off the Wave Hill cattle station in 1966? It's as simple as that. Remember to include the question in your answer, so you're going to say, the Gurindji people walked off the Wave Hill cattle station in 1966 because, and then you're going to give me at least 100 words. But some of you are keen as beans, so here's a little bit more homework if you want. Read chapter 4.10 about the Wave Hill walk-off, and check this video out. It's a short news clip about Wave Hill. bit.ly/WaveHill2020. As always, thank you so much for being involved in this lesson, and as I like to say, keep it real.